Tuesday, April 19th, 2022, 7 p.m., City of Somerton regular council meeting. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Gerardo Anaya,
Present.
Vice Mayor Miguel Villalpando,
He mentioned that he might not be able to.
Okay, on Zoom.
Councilmember Luis Galindo,
Could be coming in late.
Councilmember Jesus Roldan,
Present.
Councilmember Martha Garcia,
Present.
Councilmember Juan Castillo,
Present.
Councilmember Lorena Sendejas.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Gonna move on, call to the public. Anybody from the public wishing to address council? There's no one. Consent agenda, we have 3 items. Approval of minutes, city council meeting March 15th. Check register for the month of March. And approval of MOU between Yuma Baseball Association and City of Somerton for use of city facilities, pitching mounds, bases, and other materials. Does any member of council wishes to remove an item from consent agenda? There's no one. Is there a motion? Second. So motion by Councilwoman Sendejas, second by Councilman Roldan. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have one presentation. This presentation on improvement plan for fiscal year 22-23 in relation to general city retention areas maintenance.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members. Jesus Mesa, Parks and Recreation Director. Here before you presented an update on our zero landscaping plan for starting fiscal year 22-23. This is an update and a proposal. It's just a presentation at this moment. As you can see that we've been discussing back and forth for the previous years, you could say, the possibility of embarking on a zero landscaping project. This is to compensate, you could say, compensate for the lack of labor staffing we currently have at the Parks Department. This is going to help alleviate also some consumption of water, and it's also going to cut back on the cost for fertilizer and things of that nature. We would start with the following. As you can see, we are proposing to start with 3 projects for the next fiscal year. It is a transition, it is an expense, and we're not going to see direct savings the first year. This is going to be more on the short term, you can say 5 to 10 year period when we see a return on investment, but we are going to see a difference in the level of service of the actual retentions. For you can see the plan. Let's just start with the improvement districts. And also, we're not going to disregard the non-districts because they're as important and they're part of the level of service that we provide as the Parks and Rec Department. Any questions to this point? Yes. Also, I want to mention, we are considering, you could say, suggesting a 3-year payback plan, so the residents don't have to pay back the city the expenses allocated for these projects in 1-year terms. It could be broken down into 3 years. It's going to be a little bit more convenient for the residents, and they're not going to feel the financial impact on their pockets as much. The next slide, please.
Mr. Mesa,
Yep.
Go back to the slide. The Valle del Sol, Desert Valley. Which retention basin are those? Are those the ones along Bingham Avenue?
Yes, along Columbia through Bingham, Valle del Sol. We would start with that short end.
Are those currently parks or are they're retention basin? What are they?
They're linear retentions.
Like how wide?
They're probably, I would say, 80 feet wide max. They're not very wide, 60 to 80 feet wide.
But they're not the ones along Bingham where there's grassy areas and where kids play. They use it as
no, it would be the other end by Columbia.
Okay, what about the one at Valle del Sol? Which one is that?
We would face it in for the next fiscal year.
But Valle del Sol, which retention basin is that? Is that the one that has the playground or which one is that one?
We are considering the one by Columbia into the outdoor fitness equipment. So it's not the area you would say where we have the playgrounds and all that, the picnic areas. So it would be from Columbia all the way to the end of that of Bingham, which we yeah. Yeah. Any further questions? Yeah, like I mentioned, there is some pros and cons to everything. On our current situation, we are trying to improve the level of service and the image of the parks, the current condition. That's the major pro at this moment. There is also the sentiment right now that some districts, some retention areas are lack of maintenance. So that's what we want to tackle directly. And you could see, you're going to see a direct benefit there immediately. Also, the pavement preservation, the walls, you can see on the districts, they start deteriorating slowly but surely. That creates another financial impact to the city and the public works department. And you can see the wear and tear. It's going to be less wear and tear on the equipment, so less investment there from the city on the short term and long term run. Also, the cons, I mean, the initial investment, it's not going to be too expensive, but it is going to be an investment on the non-district side. And also the residents, we would have to increase the taxes for the districts, which we can distribute into 3-year plans, or when one direct payment, which is not going to be outrageous. We would have to look at the definite numbers upon approval, later approval of council. That's what council wishes to move forward with. And like I mentioned, the spaces we are considering are not intended or not used for, you could say, for recreational activities. They're minimal in dimensions. They're not wide enough or big enough for recreational activities. Those we're going to continue to maintain and leave them open for possible recreational use. Any questions on the pros and cons? Next slide, please. This is where we get more into the meat and the bones of the presentation. We're considering 3 retentions per year. This was based on actual quotes from JSA, which is our contractor for landscaping services right now. We have about 2 years left on that contract, and the numbers they are fair, you could say, for 3 districts. First is Valle del Sol. As I mentioned, we're considering 1/2 inch rock decomposed granite, and it's Mohawk style, so it's not going to be the Yuma kind, which is a gray. Give it a better essence, a better touch, more colorful, so it's not going to be as pale. Yeah.
So it says on 12th Street. That's the long one, no?
Yeah, but we're considering the short end. It would be the last end, you could say, by Columbia till the end of Bingham. There's a yeah. The other one's a bit very, very big space, and since we have playgrounds and all that, we don't recommend that area. Desert Valley, it's by Crane and Eucalyptus. It is a smaller retention area, but it needs some work. And it's 32 grand right now, the budget, as you can see. And the other one, Desert Valley, it's by Bingham. We're only considering basically rocking the far end, all the center area and the far end into the wall. You're not considering the inner portion that's facing the street, because you really can't see it, and it's going to save some funding, and it's going to leave some green areas, so it's not going to be as desert-like. And for those three projects, it would be an expense of almost $75,000 for all three. And please consider a contingency, since supplies for everything, they're fluctuating too much. So that's always a possibility. And the second round would be for next fiscal year, 23-24. Also another section of Desert Valley. And it's a pretty big area that we would rock, and 34,000. Valle Sereno is the area by Choya Avenue and Ramona Street. It's a smaller retention area. That's where the smaller ones are usually going to be around 10 to 12,000, depending on the current state of the pricing for supplies. And Las Haciendas, it's the small area by Palo Verde Street and Van Brunt. It's located towards the north side of town, closer to Council Park. And it's a smaller project, 58,000 for the three. Any questions on this? Is, like I said, is just to get an idea. We can move forward with more, with less, just so we have an idea what's going to cost for the extra projects, and we can break down a little bit more for the residents what's going to be the increment at a later time if council wishes.
And Mr. Mesa, these retention basins, they're not ones that are used by kids in the afternoons or anything like that. I mean, because just looking at some of them here, I know when I drive out in the evening, I do see some kids out in the basins, kind of playing sports or. And I know if we remove the turf and we put the granite, it'll.
Yeah, there is some retention areas, districts and non-districts that are used for activities. These are typically not used. Now, it doesn't mean that they're unusable. You can play whatever you want in a smaller space, but they're not recommendable. They don't have the dimensions for any, you could say, official activity or non-official for practices. They're basically too small for anything organized. You could fit maybe 3-4 people and they could play around, but it doesn't have amenities or the dimensions for any practices or any sort of organized recreational activity. Next slide. For 24-25, these are improvement districts also. We're considering 2 more for the next phase, you could say. Valle del Sol is 12th Street to 14th Street by Somerton Avenue. There's Valle del Sol 1 and 2. They're bigger areas, but like I mentioned, they're not used for any activities. We would install some shrubs and some trees, prune the trees, low profile trees, so that it's not all desert landscaping. We don't want to do, we want to avoid from rocking the whole retention areas unless they're very small. The very small retention areas is not an issue, but if they're of significant size, you could say, we would add some shrubs and some green amenities. Also for Amistad number 4, it's close over there by Council Park. by Calle de Paz and Van Brunt Avenue. And it's closely connected to Avenida Serenidad. Also, we would have to install there like a stabilizer for the bordering. It's pretty much open. And granite, just decomposed granite on the whole bottom. And that's 12,000. We are suggesting on the first phase, we're considering the retention area by Cesar Chavez, which is close to the high school. It's you could say we took a strategized approach because on the arterial roads, or you could say we are developing, that site is growing, so that area next to the elementary and the high school would be a priority. Any questions on the districts? Next slide, please. On the non-districts, like I mentioned, we are not discriminating any site, any area. Every area in Somerton is equal and they're as important, but of course, residents are paying, so it's a little different in that nature, but the level of service has to be the same. It has to be proper for all retention areas. And these are the areas that we could distribute in a matter of one fiscal year, 2 per year, or however council wishes. We can always tackle the areas and go with all 5 for next fiscal year, which would be ideal, but it is going to be an expense about, you could say 75,000, because they're very small retention areas, all 5 of them, and they're distributed in different areas around the city. And I leave it open for questions, comments.
I have a comment, Jesus, on the decomposed granite. In my area, I know that those retentions have those decomposed, and I live on Las Haciendas section. So that's the type of material you want to replace these other retentions, take out the grass and put that type of material?
It would be a different type of rock, and the material would be a little bit different. We're going to try a different method, so hopefully it's going to stick a little bit better. And the prior method that we used with the tarp-like material, it's not working, so we would go with a different approach.
Right, and I guess that's where I'm leading to my comment. Whereas, that area is because of the rain and everything that falls through there. I mean, that type of decomposed granite doesn't work, and so how are you going to save?
Yeah, it's going to take an adhesive to start, and it's going to take also some spraying, because all the herbs and all that, they start flourishing, and that's when they lift the actual plastic, you could say, for the layering. So we would have to go with a different method. JSA is more than capable of applying the necessary methods and means and going with a different route that's going to be a little bit more durable. They're an experts at this, and they have all the tools, the manpower, and the time.
So in the long run, is it more cost effective?
Yes.
If you're going to have to spray and making sure that the whatever sticking part you're going to put on there annually or biannually, is it worth the cost?
Yeah, it's worth the cost in the essence that the staff time is going to be alleviated. Staff is going to be able to concentrate on the other projects, on the maintenance of the flagship parks, concentrate on the facilities, all the projects that come up, and the level of service is going to be the greatest benefit. And it's just a matter of using our contractual services for the spraying and all that for maintenance.
So will you go back and fix those retentions that have those decomposed granite?
Yes, eventually we would go with all the areas that are smaller and just do the zero landscaping on all of them.
But the ones that we have now?
Yes.
You're going to take those out and redo them?
Redo them.
Thank you.
One thing that would help, at least you're proposing a 3-year payback, will be how much we're collecting from those districts and see if we can pay it. We can see how much the residents are paying now. It can be paid with what they're collecting with the district, then I'd say do it in one, but if not, then we can space it out, and then eventually we need to keep track of that and then reduce that for those residents if possible. The other thing is I didn't see any regrading on the proposed work, and one issue that we have on Bingham is those retention basins, the slopes are too steep, so we need to keep in mind that at least have a 3-to-1 slope, so that DG sticks to the slopes, because one good rain, and if it's too steep, though, that's why we're getting those that decomposed granite washed every time it rains. So at least, ideally it would be 4-to-1, but if we reduce capacity, then 3-to-1. But now that we have interconnection, maybe we could look at 3-to-1 slopes, and that would alleviate those when it rains, that rock is washed from those slopes.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can consider the regrading. It's going to help.
Other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business. Approval of lease agreement with Del Outdoor Advertising for 1 6x12 billboard and structure located at 851 West Main Street in the amount of $3,240 per year.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Jorge Lozano, City Attorney. Before you is an item that appeared on last meeting's consent calendar, and there was some questions by some council members regarding the proposed lease. One of the questions had to do with us entering directly into a contract for a lease in one of our city-owned properties. I took a look at that, and our Somerton City Code does allow the city manager has delegated authority to negotiate lease contracts up to $30,000. Any leases for any of our city property that exceeds $30,000 must be done through the RFP process. So in this situation, this lease doesn't yield more than $3,000 plus a year. The total contract for 2 years is $6,280. That's the amount that we're talking about. In addition, the pole is not owned by the city, which means that upon cancellation of this lease, the owner takes their pole. What that does is, currently it's a legal non-conforming use. So that means that we, as a city or any future owner of that property, cannot erect a sign there. So it's been grandfathered in essentially for that use. So if we do cancel the contract, then they remove their pole, and the city loses out on some potential revenue. And lastly, some of the concerns, at least by one council member, had to do with other people appearing or setting shop in our city-owned property. For example, a city vacant lot. An example was given about a lot probably on Main Street between Old City Hall and Sunset, etc. And that they weren't. Some residents aren't able to rent that out from us, or etc. But one of the distinguishing factors is, one, we don't usually rent out those properties to the private sector, and two, this is a lease agreement that was already contained in the sale. It's a standing agreement that the old property owner had, and we wish, I think, to keep that status. And it's entirely up to the council today to determine whether you want that revenue from that billboard, or if not, we can move forward and we can terminate however you wish.
Any questions or comments?
Just also, Mayor, one last thing going forward. This lease agreement has a 60-day cancellation period. So at any time, either Del Alto or ourselves, if we don't want to continue with the relationship, we can give each other 60 days and the contract is over, as we're preparing to do design work and to do some amenities in that empty lot in preparation for our future expansion of the community center.
Is there a motion?
Here, I have a quick question. I'm reading, and I think they sent this information to you as well. It mentions about prior to approval, there should be publish a notice of intent to lease. Is that notice going to be? Is that part of it, or
the section that
the 6.4?
Yes. So the section that I applied here is section 3-5-128 of our procurement code. One of the council members did mention that particular code. I'm not sure if that's the most up-to-date code from the 2008 that was mentioned. I based myself on the code that we have currently published online, which is the most up-to-date code. On the particular section that we're using, there is at least no requirement to publish a notice of intent to lease, since it's essentially telling us that city manager can negotiate the lease.
Okay. Just wanted a clarification on it.
Any further questions or comments? Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
So motion by Councilman Roldan,
Second.
second by Councilman Castillo's in favor.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, discussion and possible action to approve second reading by title only of ordinance number 2022-001, an ordinance of the City of Somerton, amending ordinance number 2015-002 and rezoning certain areas in the city for real property described herein as assessor parcel number 211-004-023, a 6.22 acre parcel, more or less, more particularly described in Exhibit A, attached here too, from government infill incentive overlay to R3 infill incentive overlay, multifamily residential, and rezoning certain areas in the city for real property described herein as assessor parcel number 211-04024, a 9.75 acre parcel, more or less, more particularly described on Exhibit A, attached here too, from government infill incentive overlay to R15 infill incentive overlay, single family residential.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This is a pretty lengthy ordinance title. Staff presented this item to you at the previous meeting, and this is for the property that is just west of the new elementary school that is currently under construction. This is the property that we are talking about. This is a step in the process to do the change of zoning. The applicant is requesting to change from government, which is the actual zoning district, to the north portion of the request is to R3 for the purpose of building a multifamily apartment complex. And the south portion will be, if approved, will be for R15, which is for a 90 lot new subdivision. So at this point, if there are no further questions from council or the public, we have not, as a staff, we have not received any comments, any other calls or anything related to this item. So if there are any further questions, I'm here to answer. And if not, I would like to ask for an approval of a second reading for this ordinance.
Is there questions, comments?
And Carmen, this is I know it would be the second reading, but we're talking about 90 R15 lots plus the apartment unit, right?
That is correct. They're two separate parcels. The north parcel will be changed to R3, which is the high density residential for, I believe, I cannot remember top of my head the number of apartment units that they are proposing. But on the south side, there is a 90 lot subdivision proposal.
Is there a motion to approve second reading by title only of ordinance number 2022-001?
Mayor, before we go on your motion, just remind Mayor and Council that at the first reading, there was 2 council members that recused because it involves the school district. That means there's 3 people.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum out of the 5. So
That was a comment I was going to make, that I want to recuse myself from this.
Same here, Mayor.
You shouldn't have asked that question.
It was more clarification. That's it.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
So motion by Councilwoman
Second.
Garcia, second by Councilman Roldan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-001? So another motion, right?
the motion that just happened was a motion to approve second reading by title only, which I think now Ms. Juarez is going to do.
The
And
reading.
after she does the reading, then we'll do a motion to
Okay.
accept the ordinance.
It's a lot of motion.
A lot of reading.
It's too long.
Ordinance, you just read it. Ordinance number 2022-001, an ordinance of the City of Somerton amending ordinance number 2015-002 and rezoning certain areas in the city for real property described herein as assessor parcel number 211-04-023, a 6.22 acre parcel, more or less, and more particularly described on Exhibit A attached hereto, from government infill incentive overlay to R3 infill incentive overlay, multifamily residential, and rezoning certain areas in the city for real property described herein as assessor parcel number 211-04-024, a 9.75 acre parcel, more or less, and more particularly described on Exhibit A attached hereto, from government infill incentive overlay to R15 infill incentive overlay, single family residential.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Second, Mayor.
So motion by Councilwoman Garcia, second by Councilman Roldan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, discussion of possible action to approve the 2020 decennial census final summary report of the city's housing unit count review and challenge to be sent to the U.S. Census Bureau as part of the count question resolution operation.
Good evening, Mayor and council members.
Welcome back, Mr. Tapia.
Yeah, it was a lot of research done in the last couple of months. Mayor, basically, this is an update from the last meeting that we had, explaining the reason why the City of Somerton was going to challenge the census based on the housing count. So this update, just to let you know that based on the findings, we are ready to submit the documentations to challenge the census. You can see, the submission to the Census Bureau is going to include of course, the mayor's certification letter, just to certify that the higher official of the city will be sending this information. And number 2 will be the findings and the explanations based on the research done for each census block. And also, we're going to include the census blocks that we are requesting modifications based on the discrepancies. And also, we're going to send the GIS files. And the home permits, as part of the submission, also we're going to include all the building permits that we had since April 1st, 2010, all the way to March 31st, 2022. not 2020, it should be 2020, not 22, sorry. And also we're gonna include the actual geocoded addresses for all those permits that we had during those 10 years. And the number 5 is basically just the guidelines that the Census Bureau requires for us to submit the electronic files. And to be able to submit electronically, we have to create an account, and that's the website that I have to go and then create an account, and then based on that information, we can upload those files. Next. This is going to be the letter. Then here, basically the type of challenge that we do is going to be the housing count. That's the only area that we're challenging, and also the location of group quarters, because we have some homes in Somerton that were classified as group homes. And this table, I showed it to you last time. This is the comparison between the census 2010, the population, and versus the 2020 census. For example, on 2010, we had 14,287. In 2020, 14,197. So basically, we actually lost population. So that's not correct. And also on the housing unit calculations, on 2010, we had 4,000 units and 52, but we had 862 new homes building permits. And we only had 23 demolitions. So that discrepancy creates a lot of concern for us. In the occupied units, 3791 in 2010 and 3960 in 2020. Even the vacant units was less in 2020 than in 2010. And also the vacancy rates, which that number is very important, because the vacancy rates eventually is going to be used to calculate the future estimations for the next 10 years. Very important number. In this sense, it's really good, 4.5%. For example, Yuma, they got 19% vacancy rates. That's gonna, eventually it's gonna hurt. But for Somerton, I think is very good, 4.5%. And also on the census blocks that we're challenging, these are the blocks that we're challenging. The census tract 11501 is only one block that we didn't agree with the number. But in 115.03, which is the central Somerton in this area, that's major. A lot of blocks that we have concerns. And in 115.05 as well. And in 115.06. And 118.02 is the one on the east side of town, on Avenue B. But basically on the middle of Somerton, that's the area that we actually found discrepancies. So we went through block by block, the whole city, comparing the actual Census Bureau housing units per block and the numbers that we have in Somerton calculations, and also using the Census Bureau GIS viewer, which is really good. So even using the Census Bureau GIS viewer on the internet, we're able to compare the actual houses in Somerton versus the actual count that they gave us. So on that, we're able to say, okay, you own aerial photography. It's telling that we have, for example, 25 homes, and you are giving us only 18. So we went block by block, comparing the aerial photography and the actual housing count that they gave us. So all those are the blocks that we're challenging. So in order to compare visually what we have back in 2010, in April 1st, 2010, and in 2020, we were able to find an aerial photography in Google Maps dated 6/4/2010. On June 4, 2010, this aerial photography is on the north side of Somerton. As you can see, all those dots represent the new homes that were built in that location in the last 10 years. And this is a map actually from the Census Bureau, the GIS viewer. As you can see the black numbers. So we went black by black comparing the actual number of units on this aerial photography versus the numbers that they gave us. That's the north side. And this is the Rollo subdivision. That area is back in 2010. As you can see, it's vacant land. So on April 1st, 2020, although right now it's almost full, completely full, but 2 years ago, we had all those homes comparing to the ones we have in 2010 with vacant land. So all those units, even though the census counts some of those, they miss quite a few in these areas. And this is the Las Estrellas. As you can see also, it's a lot of new homes that were built during the last 10 years, 2010 to 2020. And now you can see now in 2020, this is the actual Census Bureau area photography. It's all full. No vacant lots at all. So the comparison is very obvious between 10 years from 2010 and April 1st, 2020. This is Valle del Sol, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Valle del Sol phase 1 and 2, that's the area that was more homes were built during those 10 years. And Valle del Sol phase 4 was complete in 2020, but the phase 3 was still under construction. You can see Valle del Sol phase 1 and phase 2 is all complete. And Valle del Sol phase 4, phase 4, it's only one lot in the corner is still missing. But the rest on phase 3, were still under construction 2 years ago. And this is the area just south of Main Street. All those homes were not built in 2010. And there were some townhomes also, Michael Hall's townhomes that were not built back then. And some on Cano Street, also some little houses over here next to the Circle K. Now you can see all those homes were built already 2 years ago. So the other ones around the city, there were some units that were able to compare, especially right here on Marshall Loop. There's some new homes were built, and also by the cul-de-sac on the northwest side of the area, and other little houses that were built during that time period. So you can see in all those areas were actually built back 2 years ago in those areas, Somerton. And these are the group quarters that were not part of the census count. This is a little different because one home can have three people living there. They can be nursing facilities, high skill. So those are the first three, they are homes. The facility on Avenue B This number has to be by April 1st, 2020, not the actual numbers that we have now. So we have to go back 2 years ago and get those counts. And the Census Bureau, for the electronic files, they require us to send their format that they need to upload into their system. You can see the columns. So those are the blocks. Based on the instructions, they don't want all the blocks in the city. They want only the blocks that are being challenged. So these are the blocks on the spreadsheet that we're going to send, the one that we are challenging. The colors represent the census tracts all the way to the bottom. Go up. Here, the difference, even though we have over 800 new homes on those 10 years, based on the aerial photography and the housing count that we have, and be able to look in the city of Somerton, we're not able to find those 800 homes. It's about 300 homes that they were missing because they already gave us those credits. So even though we have 800 homes plus the census counts, the Census Bureau already counts some of those. So the actual count that we are challenging is about 300 new homes that we're going to be able to challenge. The rest, we went back and forth, count and recount many times the census blocks. And we're not sure if it was a miscount in 2010, that they gave us a little more housing units in 2010. We don't know. Actually, I don't know these discrepancies. But based on the actual units that we have in Somerton, we should gain about 300 new homes. So that's the actual challenge that we are able to send back to the Census Bureau. And the group quotas is only 22 more people in those group homes. In any case, we're sending all the new permits, all the new homes that we have on those 10 years, all the addresses and the issue date. The only thing that we need to keep in mind is that when it's a building permit, they have like a 3 to 6 month lag. You have a building permit ready to start construction, but you don't finish the house when you issue the building permit. You finish the house 3 months or 6 months later. So in some areas, the houses that end in March 2020, those may not be counted because those will be completed by the summer in 2020. But we send in those addresses anyway, just for them to have the records. But basically, the homes that were issued between January to March, those may not be counted. This is just a summary of the requirement that they have, all the way to the last one. So the actual account is all ready to go. All I need to do next step is to collect all those files and then send the information back to them. They're required to be zip files, compressed files, all the GIS files, the spreadsheets, the documentation, the mayor's letter, certification letter. Everything is going to be in one package and then upload it to them. And according to the Census Bureau, they have like within 90 days, they're supposed to respond back to the city based on their findings. So what I'm going to do next is to collect all these files and then send it to them. But I continue every week, be in contact with them to see what's the status of their review the city's documentation. But like I said, unfortunately, even though we have over 800 new homes in those 10 years, we're not able to find 100 homes that were missing, only 300 plus. Like I said, maybe it was a miscount in 2010, but we cannot challenge 800 plus homes, only 300. So the files are ready to go. If you approve the report as presented this week, by prayer Friday or Monday, it's going to be complete and sent to the Census Bureau. One more thing, what's pretty important is that these 300 new homes are going to be adjusting the base of Somerton, the housing unit base. And that's the base that the state demographer uses to calculate the estimations for the share revenues. So it's very important that we have all those numbers corrected. This is not going to change the Census Bureau count, only the future estimations. So probably by 2022, 23, we may be able to have an adjustment in 24 and 25 and so forth for 10 years. Adding these new homes that we're challenging, plus the new building permits, new home to be built every single year. So it's very important for Somerton to continue pushing for new residential areas. Not only helps with the census count, but also helps with the share revenues, of course.
Thank you, Victor. Any questions or comments?
I mean, I think after listening to your presentation, I mean, we still end up getting the short end of the stick, you know, because even with the 300 homes that we can count, if we average, let's say 4 per household, that's only 1,200 more residents. When I think in our count and our estimations, we're more like 5,000 or 6,000 down. So
building new homes will have more kids.
I mean, so how, you know, so I guess it's that. I mean, how do we move forward with that? Because it's going to have a monetary impact on us.
Yeah, Mr. Castillo, you're correct, because the key for Somerton, Yuma, and San Luis, all this area, during the Census Bureau meetings, census discussion, we had Yuma County, Yuma, San Luis, and Somerton. What we're trying to do now is to create a committee to actually be reviewing, not wait for the census to come in. We're going to be reviewing every single year that we had the right count. Like I mentioned, the vacancy rates, very critical. The persons per unit, the household size, very critical. Back in 2010, Somerton had like a 3.4 something per unit household size. It varies based on apartments, townhomes, single family. It varies the household size. So those numbers are really critical, because the state is going to be using those calculations to estimate the populations that will be used for the share revenues. So when the Census Bureau adjusted the base, that's going to be used by the state of Arizona, and then put them on top. And like I say, the vacancy rate, which it is 4.3, is really good for Somerton. Yuma has 19%. They have a huge challenge. So they have to do is challenge the actual vacancy rates, but because they have so many non-residents population. So that's very important.
Do you know if other, let's say, border town cities like us were impacted in this same way?
According to the Census Bureau, they actually, we attended a conference call a month ago, and they mentioned that they undercount Hispanic population all over the U.S. The Hispanic population, especially on Arizona, Texas,
border areas,
and also the 0 to 4 years old population. Those two populations were on account. And they agree they made mistakes, but there's nothing they can do. All they have to do is to correct with the next census. But they actually say that.
10 years while we live through the consequences.
Correct.
You know, I mean, I think it's more impactful on us because we're such a small community, and you know, it impacts us hard as opposed to Yuma or San Luis because of the revenue.
Yeah, it's something the challenge that the Census Bureau went through, you know, the pandemic. A lot of people did not answer the questionnaires.
And the citizenship question.
It was a challenge for Somerton. Like a 47%, Carmen, I think it was 40% response for Somerton. Really low. So the Census Bureau had to do their magic to be able to estimate those people that were not counted.
I think we've discussed it 4 times already, the reasons why it was undercounted and everything. So I think at least for now, this presentation is presenting the facts. And any other questions or comments?
Hector, what's the timeline after you submit this?
The Census Bureau agrees to say within 90 days to respond. So in 3 months.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve the 2020 Census Final Summary Report? So motion by Councilwoman Sendejas.
Second.
Second by Councilman Castillo. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 4. Discussion of possible action to accept donation from Cocopa Indian Tribe in the amount of $20,545.94 to be used for parks and recreation improvements.
Mayor and Council, I want to present you with Vice Chair Rosa Long and the other board members of the council tribe as they're going to present a check.
A picture. Tribal member.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go back to item number 1, discussion of possible action.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor, there is a motion
Okay.
on this item.
Okay.
Should Mayor, the motion is to use, at least we're recommending for parks and recreation improvements, but you may have other areas that you want to use this funding for.
think historically that's been the case, being that, just since I can remember, it's gone to Parks and Recreation unless other council member wants to suggest another use for those funds. But in the past, we've used it for the basketball court, for the exercise equipment on Pericone, for Joe Munoz, I remember, shade.
Playground equipment for the pool.
Yeah.
So, something where it's visible to the resident.
We still need to expand on that skate park because the amount that we put on there is it needs more improvement on that area to make sure it's useful friendly across the board.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion to accept the money to be used for Parks and Recreation improvements.
So motion by Councilman Roldan, second by Councilman Castillo. In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And back to item number 1, discussion and possible action to approve Somerton Pulguita event for Saturday, May 14th, 2022 at Council Park. Will be presented to by Councilwoman Garcia.
Hi, Mayor and Council, Marta. We discussed this last week, last meeting under summary of current events, a proposal for a yard sale in Somerton. It's a plan to help mitigate Sam's job in September, hopefully trying to help the city out and make his job a little bit easier. Trying to encourage our residents to start taking out their stuff ahead of time. And I'm proposing we won't need any staff for this event. Proposing May 14th on a Saturday. I didn't put the time, but it would be from maybe 7 to 11 or 8 to 12. Try it out for the first time. I was proposing cost $10 because usually when to take a yard sale permit, there's no cost to it. So just because of the use of the park, and we can use it for proceeds will go to the youth programs for parks. But I'm up to any suggestions from you guys on the cost for a 10 by 10 spot. I would open it up a week before for registration and see how many residents are interested in participating.
Any questions or comments?
I have some. So, Ms. Garcia, so this would be residents, like their items that they usually put out front for pickup.
Not tires and stuff like that, right? But
Something that they'll have.
Yeah, but things that would be, let's say, that can be, let's say, sold or.
Yeah, I would say and I don't know, couches, that I put out.
And this would be the owners coming in and setting up? Or?
Yeah. Bring your own canopy and set up your own little 10 by 10 spot.
Yeah. Okay. I think personally, when I was looking at this, I think this does sound like a great idea, especially because there is no staff time expenditure for the event. I think for that's a big one. My only concern on this is, do we have a process, let's say, in place for, let's say, another community member comes in and has an idea like this? Has this been viewed by, let's say, a committee? Or I think in the past we've asked about maybe having like a rubric or something that staff can kind of decide and say, okay, it meets certain things, and so that we can move forward for that.
But I'm not. Well, in response to that, I think you're referring to nonprofits and stuff like that. We're not, I guess, gearing it towards that. It's just to help,
right,
our departments out.
Yeah, and I think where I'm thinking is let's just say if you know, my neighbor has an idea that wants for it to come to fruition, you know, what would be the process? I mean, do we have something like that in place? I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I think it's also at the same time we might be setting a precedent for future. You know, I just want to make sure that if we do that we have some guidelines and some something in place to allow it. I mean, I see this. I see us benefiting, the city benefiting from it.
Mayor, if I may, Mayor had asked me a couple of times, as a matter of fact, been looking for them, and actually, the attorney or city attorney did find the application, this is the first time we actually use this application. Yes, this actually occurred when I went back. And I finally got a hold of our previous city manager. He had the other portion of that information. It has guidance on the in-kind and then guidance for nonprofits and so forth. There is a couple of minor changes I would do, but this is the process in itself to move forward on anybody wanting to come to the city and have some sort of event per se. So we might make some small changes, but this was approved back in October of 2019. And we finally found they were in different places. And so actually, as of today, I think Vanessa did put it on their website as well. So this information is already out there.
So I mean, in the future, every time there is, let's say, for example, an idea like this, it'll come before us and then we'll be the decision makers?
It depends on the guidance. The guidance kind of gives you a guideline. If it falls on those guidelines, then we might be able to make the decision as far as staff. Certain items, for example, this will come to council.
So what determines what comes to us and what doesn't?
If it's an in-kind that the city wants to give, or if it's a nonprofit as well.
It's going to cost the city, basically.
If it costs the city, then definitely has to come to you. Basically, that's what it boils down to, which includes staff time.
That was the only thing, but I mean,
You know, Juan, and I understand what you're saying, but you know, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be another event at Joe Munoz Park, and you know, it didn't come before City Council. That bike, something to do with the bike for autism, and so I'm not understanding the difference for those two events. I don't know if their staff time is going to be used for that.
It's like any other tournament. If they're using it and they paid their fees, then
yeah.
For Joe Munoz, then they pay their fees. If it's $25, $50, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. So, are we going to verify the residents?
Yeah, so that's the plan. The week before, do a registration, and it's only open to. Well, I was planning to include the mesa.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Just comment, I guess. I think this is something, maybe we can do it twice a year. You know, we have that people can come and you know, it's going to benefit our own city, their own citizens, you know, instead of us going picking up some of the stuff at their houses, is going to bring it to them and then, you know, whatever. So I think, you know, it's also bring people from out of our city so they can buy stuff for, you know, there's always people looking, yarderos, in other words, that they're looking for. So they'll just do one stop and they'll take whatever they need. So I think it's a good idea. Thank you, Councilwoman Garcia for that. So I think it's going to help us, and especially the Public Works Department. And it's not going to need any manpower from the cities. So it's even better.
When is cleanup? September. Yeah, so maybe we can look, if it's successful, expand it and maybe put additional resources in it. And if it works out, and if Public Works Department has think it's worthwhile, then maybe you can bring some food vendors or something.
Beverages.
La Pulga number 2.
Is there a motion? Oh, thank you. So motion by Councilwoman Sendejas.
Second.
Second by Councilman Roldan. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, discussion and possible action to approve resolution number 2022-003, a resolution of the mayor and city council of City of Somerton, Arizona, declaring as a public record certain documents filed with the city clerk entitled Flood Insurance Study for Yuma County, Arizona, and incorporated areas dated January 16, 2014, flood insurance rate maps dated January 16, 2014, and flood regulations for Yuma County dated August 21st, 2006.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Before you is a resolution that actually is part of an ordinance that we're asking for approval as a subsequent item. This resolution declares those documents to be public records. The reason for that is because we do have to publish ordinances, and those records that we want to adopt are over 175 pages long. If we don't declare them to be a public record by resolution, then they must be published with our ordinance. And that's going to be 20 times larger than our normal Yuma Sun. That's going to be pretty costly. So resolution in front of you is to declare those records to be public records. And then on the next item, we can discuss the adoption of an ordinance that adopts those public records.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve resolution number 2022-003? A motion by Councilwoman Sendejas. Second by Councilwoman Garcia. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action to approve first reading by title only of ordinance number 2022-002, an ordinance of the mayor and council of City of Somerton pertaining to the National Flood Insurance Program, adopting by reference flood insurance study FIS, rate map and flood management ordinance obligation and greater restrictions, severability, and providing for penalties.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as we were revising our Somerton City Code, we realized that we were not in compliance, or essentially we didn't have the most updated version of our flood control ordinance. So this ordinance aims to get us in compliance and to adopt the most recent documentation. First of all, previously in our ordinance, the mayor was the floodplain manager. With this current ordinance, changes the mayor to a member on staff. We've looked at this. We mentioned the staff member to be the city manager. And also we are adopting new versions of the floodplain regulations for Yuma County. Essentially, Yuma County is the entity responsible for floodplain management and regulations. And so we're also reaffirming that we're delegating that authority to them. But all in all, the city administrator or manager would be our in-house floodplain manager. Does Mayor and Council have any questions with respect to that?
Do you accept that role?
Sure.
Untold.
Then we make Sam the flood.
Yeah. Or Carmen.
Well, you might need a jet ski.
That's true.
Any questions or comments? There a motion to approve first reading by title only of ordinance number 2022-000-2. Motion by Councilwoman Sendejas,
Second.
second by Councilman Castillo. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Also, this is the motion by first reading. You want me to read the ordinance?
Or is Saul here? No?
I'll try my best. So ordinance number 2022-002, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Somerton, Yuma County, Arizona, pertaining to the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, adopting by reference flood insurance study, FIS, flood insurance rate maps, FIRMS, and floodplain management ordinance, abrogation and greater restrictions, severability, and providing for penalties.
Thank you. So we're gonna discuss 8.5 after our executive session. So we're just gonna jump into summary of current events.
Mayor, COVID-19, obviously the level of concern is at 1. In addition, this is the first time the Yuma Regional Medical Center showed no COVID patients in the hospital for the first time in 2 years. So it came out in the newspaper. So that's great news. Unfortunately, there is an increase in COVID cases back east. So by the time it reaches the southwest corner, it usually lags about 3 weeks behind. So we're going to start seeing an uptick here in a couple of weeks, unfortunately. We'll be having a ribbon cutting ceremony for our community center on Thursday. And this is obviously for a new HVAC. And also at the same time, we'll have an appreciation dinner for our commissioners. There's another event that we'll be having, Art Festival, this weekend. Hope to see everyone at Centennial Park, and car registration will be this Friday for our Chelada Fest as well. On the 2022 election cycle and voting locations, I sent some information, but early voting for primary elections starts Wednesday, July 6th through Friday, July 29th of 2022. Early voting for the general election starts on Wednesday, October 12th, which is a Friday, all the way through November 4th, 2022. You can also drop off your Yuma County recorder at the Yuma County Recorder's Office from Monday through Friday. Chief De Anda.
Mayor and Council, this last week was the first week that we didn't do anything COVID. We didn't hand out a self-test kit. We didn't go on any COVID calls. We didn't transport any COVID people. So it was an awesome week for us. We really enjoyed it. It's the first time in 2 years. So it's great. We didn't respond to the border either, a single time in the whole week for the asylum seekers. Although we have been meeting in fact, today I met with a couple people and on Zoom with Amanda Aguirre, who's planning a location center for them where they can be put while they wait to be transported out. And so it's, if you ever see her in the street, you need to really congratulate her. I looked into it. It's going to be the only one in the nation. There's nothing like it anywhere. In fact, the Valley tried to do it in the Phoenix area and they failed. They weren't able to do it. So it's a pretty amazing thing. And other than that, that's all we have. Thank you.
Armando, you want to mention our open positions? Armando.
KVHR, Mayor, council members. Currently, we have open positions, maintenance worker 1 part-time, and administrative specialist part-time, firefighter, EMT, full-time, part-time. Although I think we're pretty much getting fully staffed. We just added 2 paramedics within the last few days, so we're getting closer there. Police officer, we're still down. Parks and Recreation aide, we're adding 5 positions. We're interviewing this week. Lifeguard, we're adding 14 part-time positions. We're interviewing this week. Water, wastewater operator, we need 1 full-time position. We're interviewing for that tomorrow. 911 emergency dispatcher, actively recruiting for that one. And a court clerk 2 full-time position. We're actively recruiting for that position.
Chief Juarez.
Mayor and Council, good evening. So we have, oh, I lost my list. Let me go back here. Okay, so we have a couple things. I've been meeting, we had a Stone Garden meeting this morning, and we haven't been able to spend all our funding because of shortage of staff. We're trying to do our best, and U.S. Border Patrol is working with us real good, so we should be able to spend most of it. We're also participating in the career fair for that is scheduled on April 26th from 1 to 4. So if you know anyone that's interested, we'll be out there seeking applicants for police officer and dispatcher. This will be at the Martin Luther King Neighborhood Center. And we continue to have a problem with the community cats. So for that one, we're continue to work with Humane Society, but now it's a different kind of problem because now we're getting calls for litters of cats. So we're growing that issue, and we're trying to handle it as best as we can with our animal control units. We're also looking into additional grants.
Your radio might be interfering a little bit with that. Oh, you don't have a radio? Okay, I thought you had something on your.
I'll just speak a little bit louder. We're looking into a new DEMA grant for additional equipment, and we'll soon have our 2016 truck that was a transfer from the sheriff's office over to us for it was a Stone Garden pickup truck through a grant that they had. So we're getting it striped hopefully this week, in the next month or so, and it'll be out on the road as well. Thank you. It's probably my phone.
Oh, economic development.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. To inform you, the economic development will be working more proactively with Arizona Western College SBDC. They will be at Somerton City Hall every second Wednesday of the month, beginning in May, to offer tools, training, and one-on-one business counseling. We are excited and thankful to the Yuma Sun for highlighting the City of Somerton in Sunday's paper in the section of comings and goings for our various ribbon cutting ceremonies. And on that note, item number 3 is, speaking of new businesses, a reminder and invitation to tomorrow's ribbon cutting ceremony for Fountain of Youth Spa. This new business is located at Synergy Plaza at 115 North Columbia Avenue. The ceremony will be at 5 p.m.
Ms. Juarez, community development.
Mayor and Council, in regards to the zoning and subdivision code update, we opened the request for qualifications. We have had it open for a month, and we only received one submittal for this consulting firm out of Phoenix, the Phoenix area. The review committee reviewed the proposal, and we decided not to accept it. So we closed the RFQ process. And now, with the assistance of our purchasing agent, we are going to be contacting consulting firms that are within the state contract, asking if they would like to submit an estimate, a quote, and their request for their qualifications. So in order for us to have at least a couple of consulting firms so we can review them again. And if there's one that meet the criteria, then we can present it to council for award of this project. Hopefully we can finish this in the next month or so, because other than that, we're gonna postpone the review of the code. We have several items that we have gathered a rather long list of items within the zoning and the subdivision codes that we would like to review this time around. So it is a hope for staff that we are going to be moving forward with this project rather soon. In other notes, the expansion of the Regional Center for Border Health, we have the construction plans submitted to us. We have a mandatory review. By the end of this week, we should be sending the first set of comments back to the applicant. Wildan is in charge of reviewing the construction portion of it, and staff is doing the rest, the civil and zoning and fire plans. We're doing those in-house, and we'll be sending those comments to them. Also, the high school and the elementary school, they continue. The construction is undergoing. The high school is moving very, very fast. The elementary school is not moving so fast, so it's kind of a slow in the process, but it's moving slowly but surely. That's all I have. Thank you.
Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. An update on our projects. The Valley Vista Water Main Extension Project. Contractor continues working on the 5 air relief valves manholes bases and started excavation next to the central canal in order to prepare the boring under the canal. An update on our South Somerton Drainage Project. Basically, same status. Contractor continues installing the storm drain pipe along Joca and Fern, and completed the new valley gutter on Cesar Chavez. New pavement will be completed this week on Cesar Chavez. An update on our 1 million gallon water tank rehabilitation project. Signed contract was received last week, and contractor should start submitting the material submittals for this project. The Parkview Commerce Center project was advertised 2 weeks ago. We're going to have the pre-bid meeting this Thursday, April 21st. The water project, the F1/4 water main extension project, contractor continues installing pipe from north to south. Approximately 2,000 linear feet of pipe has been installed. And finally, we received the new sale order refuse truck for sanitation and the new dump truck for sewer department. Thank you.
Parks.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Just want to mention that yearly inspection on the Senior Center by WACOG took place April 14th. No irregularities were found at the site. Also, recreation staff held a successful community spring games event. It was introduced to the community and the region this past April 13th through the 14th with 5 teams. They enjoyed several activities. It was a very nice family event. Also, just want to invite the whole community this upcoming Saturday to our Somerton Arts Festival. It's the first time we host this type of culture event in the city. It's going to feature many elements like art exhibits, bigger raffles of instruments for the community, support the music and arts here in the community, and activities for kids and adults, live painting area, and arts and crafts booth. So it's going to be an opportunity similar to the project that was presented today, proposed for the Mini Pulita, but for arts and crafts, something different for the people to sell their products and their work. Thank you.
Finance.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. We are working on finalizing the preliminary budget on the personnel portion specifically. This week, we received state shared revenues from the City of Leagues. They look favorable, which is great, and those are the preliminary numbers. However, hopefully after we've submitted the numbers to the Census within October, that'll make a difference, and we will get additional funding for those for that additional population. I'm also working on two policies to bring before you in May. Resolution for the CFO designation for the Auditor General in order to submit the annual expenditure limitation report. And that's all for me this week. Thank you.
That concludes, Mayor.
We had our vaccine clinic last week, was it? 2 weeks ago? Okay, 2 weeks ago. Sorry. Majority of the requests were for school-age children and their vaccines. We did have a few COVID, but the majority were coming in with notes from the school nurse. So I thought it was a pretty successful event. We're going to try and promote it a little bit more with the schools again, being that school's almost out. Our next vaccine clinic will be on May 5th, which is a Thursday.
Again, putting it out to residents, anybody that needs first, second, third, now even fourth, are welcome. It'll be at the cultural center from 3 to 6. I was going to mention something else. I forgot. I'll come back.
I have nothing, Mayor.
I attended the Azul Cafe ribbon cutting ceremony, and I want to thank staff for a great ribbon cutting. Again, I would like to recommend to see those lives done from the marketing department. I have asked by many residents of the status of these lives of the businesses, and I'm not saying to have one weekly, but at least have them for the ribbon cutting ceremonies. And that's just introducing the community and the new businesses to our community on these Facebook Lives. And, I did a little bit of the research and I went back to see how many people have shared and viewed, and those seem to hit really good. The city began with this great initiative, which are seen by many, and I just don't understand why they've stopped. Also, I attended the closing. Thank you for being invited to the closing spring games. I want to thank staff for their hard work. Jesus, thank you very much. Maybe let's try to coordinate a time where it doesn't fall on Holy Week. I'm sure you would have more people participating, but they seem pretty fun. The comments that I got from those participants, they had a lot of fun. So thank you very much. I also read the city manager's report on the expansion of the community center. I do have some concerns. I'm not opposed to it, but I would like some more information as to the vision of the expansion. And I want to talk about the pool and the baseball field that's there. My house is right in the corner, so I just want to make sure what the vision is for that community center. So I'll stop by and talk to you about that. I don't know if the old senior center has been considered for the upgrade as well, so we can purchase that, rent that out for potential, people who want to rent it. I think that building has great potential. And that's all I have.
Just, it was nice to see kids again in our parks. I know the T-ball started yesterday, and grandpas and grandmas, and that's the age of the whole family goes to see those kids, and kids wrestling for a ball, and it was nice to see that again. And then also on the other fields, I start practicing. So it was good to see. I think is this I guess between ourselves and also the baseball league is gonna put Somerton again on the map like it used to be before. So yeah, remember the old days.
Mayor, before I remember, we took a tour. We were invited for a tour of the high school, how it's going right now. And the principal, Lucky Arvizu, asked me to invite council for a tour, if you'd like, preferably on Fridays. But just let them know, give them a good heads up when you guys would be available, and he'd be more than happy to walk you guys through the project. It's very nice. It is.
Not this, the following Friday.
Not this Friday, but the following Friday. Okay, I'll let him know.
And the only thing I have, I went to the spring, the spring games, and like everything is the first time. It has good potential. There's always room for improvement, like we discussed during special events, that we get together with staff, lessons learned, and what council members that participated or were there. If you have any comments, send it to the city manager, compile them, and then send it to the rest of council. It doesn't have to be a presentation, but at least we have it noted for next year so we can improve. But yeah, there's like everything. There's certain things that we discussed that we could see improvement, but it was overall, I think the people that participated was a great event, and it was it was there. So that's it. We're gonna We're gonna take a 5-minute recess and then we're gonna go into executive session, then come back to Hay que ver para creer. Okay, we're gonna go back to item number 5, discussion and possible. Okay. Discussion and possible action to select a proposal submitted by Steve Haxon of Haxon Masonry Inc. for Old City Hall pursuant to request for proposals to 2019-001 for city-owned building located at 110 North State Avenue and 150 West Main Street, and authorize city staff to enter into sale negotiations for the selected proposal. Any questions or comments by council? Is there a motion? It's a motion by Councilwoman Sendejas.
Second, Councilmember
Castillo. Second by Councilman Castillo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. It's 8:59. Meeting's adjourned.